Hi everyone, welcome back to the Stitches and Scribbles channel. My name is Erin and I have a project vlog for you today. This is a project that has been on my list for a very long time. I purchased the yarn, I believe, a few years ago, and I'm finally ready to do it. So, in case my shirt didn't give you enough of a hint, today I'm going to be crocheting Frog and Toad amigurumis. This pattern, I'm looking at it on my computer so I get the details right. This pattern is the Frog and Toad Crochet by Frog and Cast. You can find it listed on Ravelry, but it links to another website to purchase, so the Frog and Cast website, and I'll make sure that I have that linked below as well. And it makes a really adorable pair of little amphibian friends. I plan on making these for the school library that I work at, but I definitely have enough yarn that I could make 2 sets if I wanted to, so we'll kind of see. I won't make 2 sets for the video, but I might end up repeating the project if I like how the pattern is made. Let's talk about the yarn that we have. So I purchased this yarn from Joann, so rest in peace. But it's all Lion Brand respun yarn with the exception of one color because they didn't have the color I needed. So to make this project, I needed a shade of dark green, I needed a medium kind of warm brown, I needed a mustardy color, a cool toned brown, and a plain white. So the green that I got is the Lion Brand respun in the color Alpine. This will be the color for Frog's body and the stripes on Toad's outfit. Then Toad is going to be made in Lion Brand respun in the color Cider. And Frog wears a mustard jacket and light brown pants, so his jacket will be made in the color Corn Silk. His pants will be made in the color Hazelwood. And then Toad's swimsuit and both of their eyes also use white. So this is just basic stitch anti-pilling acrylic that I'll use for that. I'll also need to use scraps of black yarn, but I know that I have that in my stash somewhere. And that's just to do the detailing to sew the mouth and to do the pupils on the eyes. Additionally, this pattern originally calls for DK weight yarn, and the yarn I'm using is definitely worsted weight, so I did also size up my hook. The pattern calls for a 2.25 millimeter hook. I'm going to start by trying a 3.25 millimeter, which I know is very small for the yarn, but the idea is to create a really dense fabric, so I'm hoping that this will work. It's also one of the nice pointy Susan Bates hooks, which makes it a little bit easier if you're using a hook that is too small for the yarn size that you're using. So we'll give that a try. I think all that's left to do is to just dive into the pattern. This is a 21-page PDF just because of how many little pieces there are. There's also lots of really great pictures that I've seen so far, and some kind of unconventional crochet techniques used to make things like the feet and the hands. So we're just gonna dive right in. I'm gonna be making Frog first. It does say that the directions for Frog and Toad's bodies are listed together with stitch count differences being put in parentheses, almost like if you were making a different size of a garment. So I'm going to be starting with Frog in the dark green, and we'll see how I feel when I'm done making Frog's body. I'm not sure if I want to make both of their bodies first and then all the clothes, or if I want to make Frog and his whole outfit and then Toad and his whole outfit. So we'll just see, but let's get started. Frog is done. He looks a little funny right now. It does say in the directions to steam block, or it just says block. I will probably be steam blocking him to make sure that his feet lay flat and his hands lay the right way, and just to kind of loosen up the stitches a little bit. I have realized in the course of working on Frog that it's been a while since I've done any sort of amigurumi, and I usually don't work on amigurumi this small and with this small of a needle. So I think instead of pushing ahead and doing Toad's body, I'm going to do Frog's clothes first and give my hand a little bit of a break from working so tightly in the round. And then I can steam block Frog and his clothes at the same time and then work on Toad while he's drying out. So we're going to go ahead and start his little coat and pants. Pausing the crochet project, talk about this a little bit. So Frog is still sitting behind me on the blocking mats, and I have finished Toad. I did notice, funny little faces making me laugh. I think that my white yarn is slightly thicker than my other colors, which means that the eyes on my Frog and Toad look a little bit bigger proportionally than the ones in the pattern, but I think it's fine. I don't think it affects the look that much. Like when you look at the pictures from the original pattern versus mine, they look very different, but I think they're still recognizable as the characters, so I don't really mind. But Toad is now done, and I'm going to start his little overalls. It's actually a swimsuit from the story, and then we'll put him on the blocking mat too. Frog and Toad are all finished. I did want to talk a little bit about how they turned out because they don't really look exactly like the pattern pictures, and I think this is for a couple reasons. Number one, as I said at the beginning of the video, I did use a different yarn size and a different hook size to make these, mostly because I picked the yarn out before I purchased the pattern. Now, typically with amigurumi patterns, all of the yarns are the same weight. I think there were a couple places where my yarn didn't quite match what the pattern called for that caused the differences in appearance. One that I already talked about was that my white yarn for the eyes was a little bit too thick, and that caused them to kind of bulge out a little bit. I also think in the original design, the yarn for the clothing was lighter weight than the yarn for the bodies of the characters. So the clothing for mine ended up looking a little bit oversized, which was not the intention, but I think they still look okay. They're still recognizable as the characters. And this just kind of goes to show that sometimes if a pattern designer calls for a specific yarn, they mean it. At the time that I purchased this pattern, there is a link in the pattern to a kit you can get with the actual yarn that the designer used. So I'm not going to say that you have to do that. But if you are planning on making this, maybe look at some of the other people who made it on Ravelry and see what yarns they used and how it worked out for them. Because mine, I think, could have been better with yarn that was more the correct weight. There were also a couple places where I did something a little bit different for the pattern, mostly in Toad's swimsuit. It called for a very odd way to stripe the colors, I think because it was trying to avoid that kind of subtle zigzag that happens between color switches in crochet. I decided to ignore that and just change colors normally as you would for stripes, and I think that that turned out fine. So that was one change I made that I think worked, and I would do it again. The other thing I kind of wish that I had done was stuff these with a combination of stuffing and like a glass marble or something to like give them a little weight to them, because mine turned out very stiff, so I don't think that they would sit naturally with just stuffing, but I think maybe they would have with like some sort of a marble or a weighted stuffing inside of them. So all things to keep in mind. I think I'm going to display these in my school library, which will be very fun. They also didn't end up with that much of a difference in height, whereas in the pattern, Frog looks a lot taller than Toad, and mine doesn't for some reason. So that one I can't really explain, because their bodies are made out of the same yarn, and Toad definitely had fewer rows to his body compared to Frog. So maybe my tension changed between the two of them. I don't know, but this just goes to show that even if you've been crocheting or knitting for years, sometimes things don't quite go the way you want them to, and that's okay. I still got a fun set of finished objects. I think my younger students who I see in the library will definitely recognize them and appreciate them for what they are, so I'm happy with that. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked what you saw today, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below so you can be notified of all my content right here on YouTube. I talk about crafts, I talk about books, sometimes I talk about both. And it's generally a good time here. And if you want to follow me on other social media sites, that information will be in the description box down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye everyone.